Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to talk to you all tonight. My name is Anu Joshi, and I'm the Vice President of Policy at the New York Immigration Coalition. And I'm so excited that I get to spend some time tonight talking to Gaby Pacheco. Gaby is a nationally recognized immigrants' rights leader who has been in this fight since 2004 and is currently the Director of Advocacy, Development, and Communications at the Dream.us. I first learned about Gaby in 2010 when she and three other undocumented students led the Trail of Dreams, which was a 4-month walk from Miami to Washington, D.C., to call attention to the plight of immigrant families that were under constant threat of deportation, even under President Obama's administration. And in 2012, as political director for United We Dream, she really spearheaded the efforts that led to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program. So I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you tonight, and welcome, Gaby.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So as I know you are well aware, just last week, we actually celebrated the 9-year anniversary of President Obama's speech in the Rose Garden, where he announced the creation of DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So can you take me back to that day when that announcement was made? You know, where were you? What were you feeling? What were you wearing? Who did you call? You know, just kind of like what was going through your mind as you were watching the president make that speech?
So I had received a call the night before letting me know, because I was supposed to get on a flight on that Friday from DC, go back down to Miami to go back home. And we had been meeting with White House administration folks. The 2 weeks before that, we had met with the White House legal staff. And, I was just preparing to go back home to recharge my batteries and come back up to continue fighting. Little did I know that we had won big. And that morning of the announcement, it was just preparing everything for what was to come. And I learned about what were going to be the parameters of the program. And it was really, that day was really, really hard to contain tears of joy and tears of excitement of what was going to happen. And we knew that we had to now prepare for what was going to be a campaign to help as many young people apply for the DACA program. So I was running around DC. I remember being in a car, having a conversation with somebody who was helping us, who wanted us to do the announcement in their office. And I was like, no, we can't do that there. It's going to be too political. We need a neutral place. So we found AILA, the American Immigration Legal Association, that lended us a space for all the immigrant youth who had been fighting and had been in DC to come together to watch it live, the announcement of the DACA program.
And you know what's so funny is I actually worked at AILA at the time that the announcement was made, and we were in Nashville for our annual conference. And so you had, 1,500 immigration attorneys all together, also, watching the announcement. Not quite the same, but I have to say there were a lot of tears and just like overcome with emotion. So tell me more about how you felt that day. I mean, you had been working towards this, for almost a decade. And then Obama had come in with so much promise for getting immigration reform done in his first year, and it didn't happen, not even an attempt, really. And there had been so much organizing that had been happening. You had done the Trail of Dreams, So how did it feel, really, to get that call? To know that like something you had been working on for so long was now going to come out of the president's mouth?
Well, I don't know if you have seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where the father, he uses Windex for everything. Well, for me, for years, had been over a decade that I had been organizing, and my go-to Windex was deferred action. So whenever we would have anybody that was in deportation proceedings, the first go-to was, let's go and get deferred action. So for me, I had been living, dreaming of that moment for years, and I had been organizing with other immigrant youth and our allies to get the president to grant us this deferred action. And, you know, my family in 2006 was detained by ICE. And the reason they were able to stay after a year of us fighting and after being able to go to courts and when everything was exhausted, they were able to stay in the country because of deferred action. So to me, deferred action was not just a thing, right, that was new to me. I knew it deeply and personally, and I wanted to make sure that not just my family, but other young people and others that were affected by the lack of Congress action to be able to have something to follow up on. And we knew that deferred action couldn't just be given to people who were in deportation proceedings, but those who were in the country legally. So, or to give us some sort of status, right, to protect our deportation. So, in 2011, I don't know if you remember, the president announced the Martin memo, or through DHS. And that was supposed to be the relief. That was supposed to be the way that dreamers were going to stop getting deported. And, you know, months into the program, we were still seeing them being detained. We were still seeing them being deported. And so we knew then that we had to continue pushing forward. So for us, and for me personally, that day, the announcement, if you watch the tape of the president speaking at the Rose Garden, first is at the Rose Garden, so it's this beautiful scenery, and then there's these little birds chirping, right? And it's just kind of like a fantasy, a Disney movie type of style, that to me, just, you know, I saw the cage, the golden cage that we were in, those doors open up for us. And for me, realizing that our community were going to not only be protected from deportation, but they were finally going to have a work authorization and finally be able to have some sort of ID and a little bit more sense of freedom that they didn't have at that time.
Yeah, wow, a golden cage. I feel like that is beautiful imagery to describe, you know, the limbo that immigrant youth and DACA recipients continue to live in. I mean, the last 9 years have obviously not been a cakewalk for any of our communities. But before we go into that, in case some of the folks that are watching, you know, don't know exactly what DACA is, can you tell us a little bit about the basics of the program? You know, what exactly what rights it gives you, and what we're still fighting for.
Sure. So the DACA program, in essence, is a memo that the Department of Homeland Security Secretary wrote, saying that individuals that meet certain criteria were eligible to apply for this deferral of deportation of 2 years. And in that deferral of deportation of 2 years, that blanket protection also came the ability to apply for a work authorization. And through that, it allowed for young people like myself and others to obtain that work authorization, get a social security number. And for the first time, probably in our lives, living here in the United States, we were allowed to get driver's licenses. We were allowed to, in some states, that allowed for young people to get in-state tuition and go to college. So it opened a lot of doors of opportunity. Being able to do that, and it practically is a memo, right? And what the president did was, they call it an executive action, but he gave the go-ahead for the Department of Homeland Security to be able to issue that memo.
Yeah, I think it's important for folks to remember that it is not actually an executive order. It was a memo issued by then Secretary Napolitano, who, it's important to know, then went to head the University of California system and was one of the, women that spearheaded some of the lawsuits trying to defend DACA against the Trump administration. So everything circles around, it feels like. So, you talked a little bit about what doors DACA opened for folks. Where did you, what was lacking though, right? So DACA opened up all these opportunities, but what didn't it open up?
Well, this is where Congress, comes to play, and being able to get some sort of reform through Congress would be really helpful here. But having access to education does not necessarily pertain. It's state by state, so each state dictates who can get in-state tuition or not. So having DACA didn't necessarily um, open the doors of education for everyone, but it did for some people, and especially some states that have passed legislation that allows for individuals with DACA, for example, to get licenses or licensures in certain degrees and programs that they're studying. So it did that. It also allowed for young people, for the first time ever, to have an opportunity to travel abroad if they met a certain criteria through this thing called and obtaining this thing called advanced parole. So for humanitarian reasons, like having a family member that was ill, for work reasons or education reasons, the program was opened up for them. And so many young people, for the first time ever, were able to travel. And when they were in school, take advantage of opportunities like study abroad programs. And for work reasons, young people were able to work and travel doing so. And then the most important one, which is the work authorization, it allowed for us to be able to have the ability to work legally in the United States and be able to move around. And we were pretty savvy immigrants, find ways to sustain ourselves, but having that work authorization allowed us to get work in the fields that we wanted to, and be able to get paid the pay that is commensurated with that job that we had, or that we were getting. So the work authorization really was one of the most important pieces of the Deferred Action DACA program, and that today, you have over 600,000 young people that have this program, and statistics show that over 200,000 of them are during COVID time, were in essence essential workers, working in fields like nursing and the medical field, and et cetera.
Yeah, I know that, one of the things that President Trump did, and his Attorney General Jeff Sessions did, when they attempted to rescind the DACA program, they immediately ended the ability for folks to apply for advanced parole. And President Biden, opened that up again, advanced parole. And I know so many DACA recipients who finally, maybe for the first time, have been able to go see loved ones outside of the country, and how much that's meant to them and how important that is. So, thinking about this, and you mentioned this, that we need congressional action. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
It's been 21 years since Senator Durbin first introduced the original DREAM Act in 2001. And it's hard to imagine now, but at that time, he had a Republican co-sponsor from Utah, Orrin Hatch, who,
Yes.
The day that he retired, he was not a friend to immigrants, I would say, at the end of his career. And it's been, 11 years since we got the closest I think we've ever gotten to actually passing the DREAM Act in December 2010, right before Harry Reid handed over the gavel and was no longer majority leader. And we fell 5 votes short of meeting that 60 vote threshold in the Senate. And I still think about those 5 Democrats that voted no at that time. And, that was the closest we'd ever been. And now it's been 9 long years since DACA was announced. And since in August, it'll be 9 years since people started first applying to the program. And it has not been an easy ride. I mean, the 4 years of the Trump administration really challenged all of us to think about what promise and what commitment are we making to these youth, and some of them not youth anymore, right? Like have families of their own that they're caring for and supporting. So I guess a question a lot of people probably have is, what is the real path forward now, right? You've been on this journey for 20 years, advocating for immigrant families. do you think that 2021 is finally the year that we get something done? And if it is, what does that look like?
So that's a difficult question to answer, because the will of the members of Congress to do something really is on the power of the people.
Mhm.
And it is really up to us if we're going to be able to push hard enough to get these members to actually listen and do something about it. Because reality is that when you pull immigration, and specifically Dreamers and the DACA issue, it pulls usually in the 80% favorable. So this issue is one issue that Americans support and that people have been able to come together, and the years of organizing is finally have paid off for the community to get awareness of this issue. Yet, however, you still have the blockage in Congress where you have right now, you would need 10 Republicans to vote with Democrats in order to pass any legislation that deals with immigration. So, um, it's going to be very difficult to pass any legislation that might help the dreamers and or the DACA or the immigrant youth or the no longer immigrant youth. Like we mentioned, we've gotten married. Some of us have children,
Yep.
and have families of our own. So it's a very very difficult thing to answer. Right now, reality is that we don't have the votes, or there is talks about it. You have a Republican that has co-sponsored the Dream Act along with Senator Durbin, Lindsey Graham. You have a Republican, Senator Cornyn from Texas, that has talked about supporting documented individuals, and Dreamers get access to legalization, but you don't see a lot of action. And last week there was a hearing on the Dream Act on the American Dream and Promise Act, HR 6, which passed in Congress, and the comments that were coming from Republican offices were just awful.
Yeah.
And so, if we were to look politically right now, I would tell you that the chances of something happening are slim, but the chances of DACA happening were slim too. And it was through the power of organizing, it was through the power of people and the constant push that we were able to get that action done by the president.
Yeah. Here in New York, we have the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, right? And so we understand how important it is for congressional action. And we are hopeful. We are fighting for Dreamers, Dream Act eligible individuals, TPS recipients and their families, and essential workers to be included in the next infrastructure plan, whatever the next, COVID relief plan. We believe that a path to citizenship for these folks can and must be included. And we were really excited to see that Senator Sanders included it in his budget resolution that he released earlier this week. And so, that's what we're focused on, because like we don't have a lot of confidence that we can find 10 Senate Republicans. And so by using reconciliation, we can ensure that with just the 50 Democrats and Vice President Harris, that we can actually provide some real relief. It's not for everyone, which is what the ultimate goal must be. But at least it's a start, and at least it will, cover these folks that have been waiting, some people 20 years for this program, right? I think about Teresa Lee, who was, some folks say, the original dreamer from Chicago originally, but now a New Yorker, who really spurred Senator Durbin to act on this issue. And I know you just did a panel with her. So, I guess you've been in the movement for a long time. And as we've both noted, we're not necessarily youth anymore. So what do you see as kind of like the next generation of organizing? What are we looking forward to? What are we looking forward to in this next cycle?
I think the next cycle is going to be the organizers that are going to think a little bit more than forward thinking, more than what we were thinking. And by that, what I mean is that they're thinking about the solutions of 10, 20, 30 years from now, right?
Mhm.
Because if we were to pass the DREAM Act today, for example, there still be dreamers that are going to be needing to get some sort of legislation or access to higher to legalization in 10, 15 years, because it's whatever happens, right? So it's like the 1986 law. It was whoever was in the country at a certain time and date, they were eligible to apply. And then after that, so I think they're going to be thinking more holistically about our immigration system and how to update it and make it so that it's up to par with the 21st century and with the global economy that we have and the globalized world that we live in today. That it's not a one fixed type of thing issue, that we look at it as we have to reframe our whole entire immigration system to really understand that this country needs immigrants, that will always need immigrants, and that immigrants, should be welcome to the nation as the years and the decades come through.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us this evening. If there was one thing that you would want folks to know about, what it's been like to be a DACA recipient, an activist, an organizer in this movement, in this moment, what would it be?
Well, what I would tell folks is that it's very difficult to be overall an immigrant in any nation, in any country. And in the United States, while there's many opportunities, it's kind of like living in that golden cage, as I had referenced before, where we do have many opportunities, but when we want to spread our wings and when we want to be able to open our wings, we can't, right? And because the cage is too small and our wings are hurting. So for us, we want to be able to tell other people that we appreciate and we love, right, the communities that we live in. We love the country that we live in. But it restricts us in ways that it hurts us personally. And so, what I would tell folks that is that, right, that we're hurting and that they have the solution to stop the hurting.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. And the fight continues. And from Miami to New York, have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.